Hello guys, welcome to another video in our Premium Motion playlist. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about motion components. So first off, what is motion components? Motion components is just the building block of using Premium Motion in your React applications for animations. So think about it like this. You want to add Premium Motion into your particular components. You want to add animations with Premium Motion. You need to make use of the motion component that is provided from Premium Motion. And that being said, what motion component means is just you being able to introduce elements, let's say HTML elements and HTML tags that are animatable, in the sense of you could animate them. And I also wanted to point out, Premium Motion is optimized. It's optimized for performance, it's optimized for speed, and it gives you best animation and a very smooth animation. And when I talk about smooth and a more detailed animation, I'm talking about 60 frames per second. Premium Motion runs on 60 frames per second, which is a very high speed frame rate. So using Premium Motion in your React application, you just have to that your animations are going to be very smooth and very detailed. And there'll be a lot of reduction in motion blur or having blurry animations and all. So you're going to have a very smooth animations with Premium Motion. Without wasting much time, let's go into code and see what motion components is, because I feel we will understand it more by showing. First of all, we're going to pull up our code base we set up in the previous video where we installed Premium Motion. So we just have, this is just a component that is importing motion from Premium Motion. And the idea around motion components is when you import motion components from Premium Motion, you have access to adding animations to whatever elements you're going to use your motion components with. So let's put an example. Let's say we have a p tag that it's just say some dummy text, and let's format this properly. Let's see what it looks like. So we have just a text. Okay, let's style this. And also remember, we still have Tailwind CSS installed here on this particular starter code. Okay, so let's make the text extra big so we can see the text. This text is extra large. You have the desire to animate this particular paragraph. If you look at this paragraph is just a regular HTML paragraph, right? And you don't have the ability to animate. In Premium Motion, with this paragraph here, if you want to animate this particular paragraph, what can be done here is this. We import motion from Premium Motion. Then we come over here and say our motion we just imported dot paragraph. We bring this up. Doesn't really make a difference, does it? Because we haven't initialized any animation or any keyframe or whatever we want this particular paragraph to do. For testing purposes, let's just try something. Let's say on initial, we'll get to this. On initial, we're going to set the opacity to 0. That means the opacity will be 0. We won't see it. Then we're going to animate the opacity of the particular text to 1. And let's add some transition. So what we just do here, we just add a delay of like 0.6. Okay, and let's go back to our browser. Now let's see this startup application. You don't see this. You can see the fade in animation. It fades in. That is the whole idea of the motion components. This particular component we have here, if you see carefully, we have motion dot, which is paragraph, and this is a motion component. In the sense, you could say, oh, this is an element. This is a regular element. But at this point, you adding this motion.p, which is paragraph, gives you access to a lot of options of what you could use to animate this particular paragraph. And that doesn't end there. We have a whole lot of elements. And based on the documentation, it's been recorded that they have all the elements are existing in HTML. So what does that mean? It means all the elements that are created, that have ever been created or that exist with HTML actually exist in your motion component. So we have access to an H1, we have access to H2, we have access to H5, we have access to even A, which is just your link. We have access to address, like you have access to all the HTML tags you could ever think about, you've ever used. You have access to image, you have access to legends, nav, options, parameter. And what you should remember is the motion component doesn't just end in HTML elements. You could also create motion components with SVGs. Let's see this. Motion.svg. We have access to SVGs. So this is the general idea of using motion components. If you're going to use Premium Motion in your React applications for handling animations, you always need to make use of motion components, because that is how you have the power and you have the ability of your element to be exposed. So one last example. So if we say we change this to a regular paragraph tag, we have an error here. It says it's not assignable to type, initial does not exist. So at this point, TypeScript is telling us that initial does not exist in your regular paragraph tag. So we adding the motion.p gives us access to the initial and a lot of variables, access to transitions, the animates, the initials. From Framer Motion, we could import motion like we already said and we already learned, and there are other variables we could also import, or should I say there are other objects, hooks and values that could also be imported from Framer Motion. For example, we have the animate present, we have use motion value, we have use transform. These are the most of the popular values you're going to use in your animations. So mostly what you'll be using is just the motion component. And I think we have come to the end of this particular video, and in the next video we will be looking at the initial value, the animate value, and also the transition values that comes in your motion components. Thank you.